Hello everyone, my name is Ekia Boachua Kunedu and we are going to be discussing the 1987 radiological accident in Goiânia, Brazil. This is going to be our table of contents. We'll be discussing the objectives, the timeline of events, the medical manifestations of the radiological exposure, the environmental impact, the interventions, and summary and references. So for our objectives, we provide context to what led to the radioactive material getting into the community, the impact on the health of the people and the environment in the community, how lack of knowledge of radiological exposure influenced the duration and the impact of the exposure, and how authorities handled the exposure. So this is the location of where the incident happened. A map showing where the contaminated areas are and the abandoned site where the radioactive material was found. In 1971, a National Nuclear Energy Commission was created, and the Institute of Guyana Radiotherapy Unit licensed moved into their new building in 1986, leaving behind an abandoned site that had cesium-137 radioactive material in it. At the abandoned site, two men on September 13, 1987 decided to go and steal this radioactive material without knowing that it was radioactive material. They decided to dismantle it and sell it as scraps. As they were dismantling it, they started experiencing symptoms of vomiting, diarrhea, and one of them had burns on their hands. They took it to a local clinic and they were diagnosed as having allergic reaction to bad food because the clinic did not have experience on radioactive material exposure. The men sold a piece of the unit to Danvier Ferrari, who lived next to the junkyard. Danvier noticed that in the evening there was a blue glow emanating from a source capsule, and he thought it was pretty and the powder might be valuable. So he invited his neighbors, relatives, and acquaintances to also come and look at the capsule out of curiosity and also take some of the powder. They took some of the powder, and all those who came into contact with the powder started having symptoms. They went to the local clinic and it was treated as symptoms of some diseases. His brother Ivo took some of the powder home and a 6-year-old was so fascinated by it that she put all the glow powder on her and even put some in her food to eat. She would eventually die, unfortunately. Danvier's wife, Maria Gabriel, who also got sick from the powder, realized that those who were getting into contact with the powder also were all becoming sick. So on September 28, she got an employee of Danvier to take the rest of the powder to the main hospital in the city so that they will examine the powder. When they got there, the two of them were diagnosed as having tropical disease because the gentleman who was carrying the powder had burn marks on the shoulder that he had the powder on. Events on September 29 led to the radiological contamination in the community being contained. So Dr. WF, who was a visiting physicist, was contacted by the doctors who saw Maria Gabriel to come and check the powder that they had brought. He bought a scintillometer which was sensitive to radiation, and as he was approaching the hospital, he put it on and he realized that the thing read to the highest reading. So he thought it wasn't working well. He got another one which also read to the highest reading. So he convinced Dr. JP, who had called him not to let the fire brigade take the machine away, but rather get all the occupants of the Vigilancia Santeria Hospital out and not let anybody come in. And this was done. Also, the doctors accompanied him to the junkyard and they were able to convince Danvier that the powder was the cause of the diseases they were experiencing, and they evacuated him and his family from the junkyard. From there, they called the Secretary of Health of the Guest State to inform the authorities of the incident and the significance to obtain further assistance. From there, the director of the Department of Nuclear Installations was called, who suggested they contact the hospital physicist as well, and also the people at the IGR for help. Between 4 o'clock and 8 p.m., several actions were taken, which will be discussed at the interventions that happened. And by 10 p.m., the monitoring team had been able to identify all the contaminated sites, and action had been put in place to get things done. So the medical manifestations of radiological exposure included skin lesions, as can be seen, and generally the Manifestations of acute radiological symptoms include nausea, vomiting, headache, diarrhea, fever, and internal reactions such as GI disorders were screened, and out of the 100,000 people who were screened, 249 people were contaminated, 129 had internal contamination, and eventually 4 people died. The junkyard that were exposed, these are before and after ambient doses of radiation that were found there. And the after radiations, you can see. So what measures were put in place? The National Nuclear Energy Commission turned the City Olympic Stadium as a staging ground where people came and they were screened. After they were screened, people were made to take showers and their clothes were bagged. The bag that contained the powder that Maria sent to the hospital, concrete was put over it, and that reduced the atmospheric radiation drastically. All contaminated buildings and sites were broken down, and they had 3 buses, 42 houses, 4 cars, 5 pigs, and 50,000 tea rolls, toilet papers, and all of them were bagged and sealed. 3,500 meters square of radioactive waste were cleared from. In summary, by Christmas, December 1992, where the main foci and all the houses within a radius of 100 meters had been decontaminated, work continued for up to 3 months to bring the place back to normal. But the lingering effect of the radioactive accident will be with the people of Guyana for the rest of their lives. Thank you for listening to the discussion on the radiological accident in Goiânia, Brazil in 1980.